Joining us live in our studio this morning is Cabot Barden and John T. Wayne. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Cabot, you've been on this show a number of times.
Yep.
But it's the first time we've had John T. Wayne on, and I want you to properly introduce John and talk about what's going on in our community and about a movie that's being produced.
Yep. John T. is an author. He writes Western novels. He's been doing it for quite a few years. He is the grandson of John Wayne, the actor. John and I have been doing a book signing tour together for about 2 years. We're here in Sylacauga today because he's doing a book signing at the museum here in Sylacauga at 2 o'clock. Friday we'll be in Talladega. He'll be doing a book signing at Elmo's in Talladega at 4, and then he'll be introducing the movie True Grit at 7 o'clock at the Ritz Theater in Talladega, which his grandfather was in. And Saturday we'll be shooting the wrap up on a mini movie that they're shooting over there at Calera, Alabama, and the public is welcome to be there.
John T. Wayne, our guest, and John, you're from what, Arkansas?
Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about your background.
Well, I joined the Marines out of high school and spent 7 years in the Marine Corps, and that's where I developed a passion for wanting to write. And I read a lot of Louis L'Amour books, and I just decided, you know, if I could write like that guy, I might be able to make a living. So I just started writing, and you know, today that's all I do. Just write my novels, go out and sign them, and meet folks, and let them know about the work that I do.
Now, what about the movie that's going to be actually taking place over at Calera? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, to my knowledge, we're filming a train robbery, and Cabot and I are both going to play the part of a U.S. Marshal.
I was about to say, I hope you're good guys.
Yeah, we're the good guys. And, I had an offer to play the part of a bad guy, and my friends are all like, no, you can't play the part of a bad guy. So I've got to kind of stick with what Grandpa did and play the part of a good guy.
Talk about being the grandson of one of the great American, so many people grew up with,
right,
on the small screen and the big screen.
You know, the part that surprises me is that so many people come up to me when I'm signing books and tell me their story. I had no idea that my grandfather had that much influence on people, or knew that many people, or yet again worked with that many people. Because just about every time I go out and sign books, I get a new story from somebody, and it's detailed, you know. So I'm also working on that book where I think it's a side of Grandpa that people just never saw. He did so many good things for people, and he didn't have to be asked to do it. He just did it, and I find that surprising, you know. Being
John Wayne's grandson, what have you been able to glean from being the grandson of such a lot of people consider him a great American. Even in his death, you know, people still talk about him today.
Yeah, it's been almost 40 years now, and the Duke was, I don't know, kind of an enigma. People don't understand just who he was, but he lived a life of grit, which, you know, the movie True Grit epitomizes that, and it's really, it's more than a movie, it's a way of life, and people, you know, need to understand that. That's just the way he lived, and he was, he didn't change characters with the movies. You know, he made the movie his. I was about to say, the movie sometimes changed its character for him. Right, yeah. Right, yeah. And I think that's what we've gotten away from when filming a Western. You know, people want to fill it with a lot of things that would have never even been in a Western situation 150 years ago, and it's just not believable. You know, I remember growing up in the 60s and the 70s, and man, if I cussed, I got my mouth washed out with soap. And so don't tell me, you know, 100 years before that, everybody was cussing their heads off. They weren't. And you can't make a family movie that way. And you know, I guess I'm old school. I believe a lot like Grandpa did, you know. I think as Americans, we can't have freedom without God. You know, if you take God out of the equation, you've taken freedom out of the equation. And there's just so many things. You know, a gun is neither good or evil, but a person makes it so. It's not the gun. You got to have some common sense. And we seem to have lost that in today's world. Nobody seems to have any common sense anymore. And that nothing is like it used to be. And so I don't know. There's still a lot of good people in America that live that true grit lifestyle. I meet them everywhere I go. They're just quiet. They do their job every day, and they work hard, and they raise their families, you know, and they don't put up with a whole lot of guff from people.
Cabot, we see even today some of the old westerns that from time to time on TV, and you'll see you'll see probably a handful of the same stars playing on different westerns. There'll be most times they're bad guys, and you know they've got that about them. But you know, old westerns are something that a lot of us grew up with, and they were old westerns then too.
Yeah.
That's one thing I like about this station here. Y'all play a lot of the old westerns on here, and I watch a lot of those. That keeps me glued to you guys on TV.
Talk about the event today. What's going to be taking place with the book signing?
After we leave here, we'll go set up at the museum. Then 11 o'clock, we'll shoot the first scene of the movie over here in a studio here in Sylacauga. At 2 o'clock, we'll do the book signing from 2 to 4. They've got another event going on this evening at the museum. They have their third Thursday every month over there, and that's something different from what John's doing. But that's pretty much what we'll be doing today. Tomorrow's going to be another busy day for us. We'll be up in the Talladega area mostly tomorrow, and of course Saturday we'll be in Calera.
John, what about your book writing? Talk about that a little more in depth.
Well, when I started writing my novels, I just wanted to write westerns, and the more I studied the western genre, I realized that prior to the Civil War, we didn't have cowboys. We had grown men doing the job. Once the Civil War got up a full head of steam, the ranchers out west couldn't hire a grown man. They had to hire orphans off the streets, hence the term cowboy. Now, they were all different colors and shapes and sizes, but they were boys, and that's where they started using the term cowboy. Prior to that, it was used in 1070 AD in Ireland for one summer, and it was used for one summer in Georgia back in 1690 when they brought cattle up from Florida. But otherwise, it fell off the face of the earth until the Civil War. And when I realized that we had so many orphans created by the Civil War, yet nobody talks about the orphan problem, I knew what I was going to be writing about. Those orphans that had to grow up without their parents and just had to survive. I mean, they had to survive the bad guys. They had to be able to eat. You know, a lot of them grew up short of the chance, or didn't grow up. They died short of the chance. There's just so many things that happened to them, and you know, when I realized what happened, I just thought, you know, this is, you can write this the rest of your life and never cover it all. So that's what I do. I write. It's a series called The Gaslight Boys, because the children had to grow up on the streets under the gas lights. You know, when the Civil War started, there were 2 orphanages in St. Louis taking care of about 2,000 children. By the time the war ended, there were 24 orphanages taking care of over 20,000 kids, and they had to, you know, they still had another 20,000 or so living on the streets of the gateway city. Well, that was crazy, but that's what was going on at the time, and it was buried in our history books because it was never written about, because the federal government had the stance, they'll grow up. And the generals in charge of the larger municipalities would not allow the newspapers of the time to write anything that had to do with the orphan problem.
How many books have you written?
I've got 6 out. I'm getting ready to release number 7 and number 8. And of course, Captain Grimes Unreconstructed is Mark Twain and Captain Grimes in the middle of the Civil War, but it's a 3-part book. It's a trilogy. And it's based on the memoirs of Captain Grimes. It's actual Civil War history. Of course, it's considered fiction, historical fiction, because I wrote it 150 years later, and you kind of have to fill in all the dialogue and lead up to all the circumstances to set the stage for the next event. But still, it's a great read. Captain Grimes Unreconstructed is just Civil War history that's unvarnished. Yeah. It's just the cold, hard facts.
Cabot, in your writings, how many books have you written now?
I'm working on number 11 now, and last these three I'm working on now is the Train from Tombstone series, and John T. is one of the characters in my book. Wow. He's a U.S. Marshal in my book.
Yeah, you didn't even ask me about that. You just said, here. That's okay. We're good friends. I don't mind.
When you introduce yourself, or you're amongst a group of people and someone introduces you by the name of John Wayne, what are some of the things that people say, you know? I mean...
I've heard all sorts of stuff. You know, if you had an eye patch, you'd look just like Rooster Cogburn.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And just different things like that. I never know what people are going to say. And the thing about one of my book signings is I never know what's going to happen. Somebody might just break out and start singing, or playing a guitar, playing the flute like Cabot, you know, and we just have a good time. And I really enjoy, you know, touring with Cabot and signing books.
You ever want to put one of those eye patches on?
I've never done that. But I may try that soon. Yeah. I've got a book called The Pilgrim Breed, which is a third episode of Rooster Cogburn. And it's if that comes out and they decide they want to make a movie out of it, I might have to put an eye patch on.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Cabot Barden and John T. Wayne, our guests this morning, going to be a big day, busy day here in Sylacauga. And Cabot, if people would like to get plugged into you guys, how do they do that?
Well, books are on Amazon and Kindle. And my books are available through Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. I think John's are too. If you want to get a hold of us, we're both on Facebook. You can email us. Go to our author page. We both have websites, so you can contact either one of us. Just punch in our name, author, and there we are.
John, I've asked Cabot this on several occasions about speaking to maybe future writers, people who are just, you know, they're dreaming right now, and they're kind of a little apprehensive about stepping out there and really putting their foot to the pedal and getting it going. Encourage some folks this morning who have that dream that just hadn't fulfilled yet.
Well, you know, when I first started writing, I had lost my daughter to cancer. And that she was 5 years old, and that was way back in '85. And I first started writing just to keep my head screwed on straight. And after about 6 months,
kind of an outlet for you, son?
Yeah, as an outlet. And after about 6 months, I thought, you know, now would be a good time. If I'm going to be writing this much, I might as well write a novel. So I started trying to develop a storyline, and of course, my first novel became The Treasure del Diablo. And it wasn't the first book I published, but it was the first one I completed. And if you're going to write a book, if you have a desire to be a writer, you have to put your all into it. And I think the one thing that a lot of people tend to forget is that every sentence, every line, word, and paragraph is a sales pitch. You want to keep the reader engaged in the book from the beginning to the very end. And I think I've successfully been able to do that because I get so many calls from my readers, and they'll just call me out of the clear blue or send me a message and say, I can't put this book down, or I couldn't put it down. Or,
where's a weird place that a thought has come to your mind about maybe a quote in your book or something like that, and you say, I got to write this down?
Yeah, that happens a lot. I started the book Showdown at Scatter Creek with the quote, "Trouble has a nasty way of determining what a man does during the day." And you know, when you think about it, a lot of times that's how your day goes. It's just trouble from the moment you get up, and you're just putting out fires all day. And so, when you read that first sentence, you got to say, okay, what's the trouble? What's the trouble? So you go to the next sentence and so on. But I find when I'm writing that I'll write a quote and not realize it until I go back and start editing the book. That's when I find them. Because when I'm writing, I'm just writing the story to get it all down, and I'm not worried about punctuation all that much. I just want to get the story down on paper and get it to its completion. And the thing I learned from my first book is, you want to know the ending when you start the book. If you don't know the ending or how you plan to wrap the book up when you start it, it could take you 10 years to figure it out, like it did with my first book. So you don't want to be in that situation.
You got to be a caboose on that train somewhere, right?
Yeah. You got to know how the book ends when you started it. If you don't know that, you don't have a complete thought. You don't have a complete story. So what I have found is, when I get an idea, I get the title of the book generally, the entire text of the book, and the ending. Sometimes it just comes to me out of thin air, and I've got to sit down and write the first 3 or 4 chapters so I know where I'm going. Wow. And write a short synopsis of the book to remind me, so that when I go back I can finish it up. Wow. But that's just a blessing from upstairs, because I couldn't imagine ever getting that stuff like that. But I've got a lot of books just sitting in the wings right now, waiting to come out.
John T. Wayne, along with Cabot Barden. Cabot, are you ever too old or too young to start?
No, you're never too old. That's for sure. I proved that point. I'm 66 now, so I've been writing since 2009. Finished my first book in 2009. So.
All right, let's wrap it up this morning, and tell us where you're going to be today and what's going to be going on the next couple of days.
Okay. I guess to the public, if you want to come by and see John, he'll be at the museum at 2 o'clock here in Sylacauga at the Comer Museum. 11 o'clock, we'll be in an undisclosed location shooting our first scene for the movie here in Sylacauga. Just come by and see us today. Tomorrow we'll be in Elmo's and Talladega on the Square at 4, and then at 7 o'clock he'll be introducing the movie True Grit at the Ritz Theater. And of course, if you want to ride on the train when we're shooting the movie at Calera Saturday, you're more than welcome. I think the tickets are $18 a person, a little bit less for children. And you can ride on the train and be in the movie if you like, because it's open to the public.
I think they've got those new seats installed at the Ritz too.
Yeah,
so
we went by and looked at them yesterday, and they're really nice.
Yeah, all right. Well, John T. Wayne and Cabot Barden, thank you both for coming this morning, and continued success, and keep us plugged in what's going on. Again, those how they can contact you guys now. Again, your books are available where?
The best way to contact me is to just go to John T. Wayne fan page and pull up my fan page, like the page, and you'll be able to follow everything that I'm doing and what's going on.
Yep.
And from there, there's links to go purchase my books.
Okay.
Yep.
Cabot?
And I have a Facebook page, Cabot Barden Author. You can go by there and say, hey. And of course, we both got websites on, you can contact us. Just pull up our name on your search engine, and there we are.
All right. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming by this morning.
Thank you.
More Daybreak just ahead. Don't go away.